You will never fully heal until you understand the one relationship that shaped your nervous system before you ever spoke a word. Long before you knew what love was, what safety was, what connection was, you learned it through your mother. Not through what she said, but through what your body felt in her presence. And whether she was nurturing, distant, overprotective, critical, or emotionally unavailable, that energy became your blueprint for love, for worthiness, for survival. Today, I'm going to show you how to finally see that pattern, not with blame, but with awareness, so you can release it, rewire it, and become the healed, whole version of yourself that you were always meant to be. Your mother was your very first mirror. Long before you ever knew what a mirror was, you didn't learn who you were by looking at your reflection. You learned it through her face, her tone, her arms, her silence. When you cried, did she rush to soothe you, or did she turn away? When you reached for her, did she open, or did she tense? You weren't analyzing any of this. You were absorbing it. Your nervous system was learning, is the world safe? Is love available? Do I deserve attention, or do I need to earn it? And that's the thing. You didn't just watch her. You became whatever she needed you to be so that you could survive emotionally. If she was overwhelmed, maybe you became quiet and low maintenance. If she was controlling, maybe you became obedient. If she was harsh, maybe you became a perfectionist so you wouldn't trigger her disappointment. If she was emotionally absent, maybe you learned to stop needing altogether. These weren't choices. These were codes written into your biology. Your identity was a survival strategy. Now fast forward to today, and you wonder why you feel anxious when someone loves you too deeply. You wonder why you apologize for existing, why you hesitate to speak your truth, why you work so hard and still feel unworthy. It's not because you're broken. It's because your nervous system is still reflecting that original mirror. It's still operating on an outdated rule: be who they expect you to be, or you won't be loved. And the moment you understand that, something powerful happens. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? You begin to ask, what did I learn, and is it still true? Because now, for the first time, you get to choose a new reflection. You get to look within and tell your body, it's safe now. I don't need to shrink. I don't need to earn love. I am allowed to exist exactly as I am. Healing begins when you stop trying to change the mirror and start becoming the one who sees yourself clearly. You didn't just inherit your mother's eye color or the shape of her hands. You inherited her unspoken fears, her emotional patterns, her survival strategies. Science calls it epigenetics. Spirituality calls it energy. But you don't need a term for it. You felt it. You've watched yourself react in ways that don't even make sense to your logical mind. Maybe you panic when nothing is wrong. Maybe you over-explain yourself as if you're always on trial. Maybe you sabotage your own happiness the moment you get too close to peace. That's not you being irrational. That's your body repeating a program that didn't start with you. Think about it. If your mother lived in survival mode, constantly anxious, emotionally guarded, or always hustling to prove her worth, your nervous system absorbed that as normal. You learn to brace yourself for disappointment, to expect abandonment, to assume that love comes with effort or sacrifice. Even if she never said it out loud, her state of being became your blueprint. And because it was familiar, your body will keep trying to recreate it, not because it's good, but because it's known. That's why so many people find themselves attracted to chaos, drawn to unavailable people, or uncomfortable when life finally gets calm. The body confuses peace with danger because peace is unfamiliar, so it pulls you back into emotional climates that match what you grew up in. Not because you're weak, but because your biology is loyal. But here's the breakthrough: loyalty to old pain is not love. You can honor your mother without carrying her wounds. You can thank her for the strength she gave you without repeating her suffering. You are not obligated to live out her unresolved story. Awareness cuts the cord. The moment you recognize, this anxiety isn't mine, this guilt isn't mine, this fear isn't mine, you stop being the echo and you become the author. You inherited their patterns, yes, but now you get to decide which ones end with you. No matter how independent, successful, or spiritually aware you've become, there is still a part of you, a much younger part, that is waiting for your mother to finally look at you and say, I see you. I'm proud of you. You don't have to try so hard anymore. Even if you don't consciously think about it, that longing lives beneath your reactions. It's in the way your chest tightens when someone disapproves of you. It's in the way you over-explain yourself when someone misunderstands you. It's in the way you sacrifice your needs just to avoid disappointing others. That is not adulthood. That is your inner child still trying to earn what they never received. Maybe you became the achiever, chasing success after success, not because you love winning, but because you're still silently asking, do you see me now? Maybe you became the caretaker, fixing everyone's problems, exhausting yourself with kindness, hoping that if you give enough, someone will finally give back. Or maybe you went the other way. You shut down, pulled away, convinced yourself you don't need anyone. But even that is a strategy. Even self-isolation is a form of protection learned from emotional neglect. And every time someone doesn't answer your message, every time someone withdraws affection, Every time you sense distance, that old wound lights up. Suddenly, you're not reacting as the adult. You're reacting as the child who once believed, if she doesn't respond, I must have done something wrong. If she's upset, I must fix it. If she leaves, it must be my fault. These patterns are not logical because they were never formed in logic. They were formed in longing. But here's the powerful truth. Your healing doesn't come from finally convincing someone to love you. It comes from realizing that you are no longer that child waiting at the door. You have the ability now to turn inward and say the words you've been waiting to hear. You have the ability to give yourself the permission, the approval, the softness you once begged for. When you stop chasing what was never given and start generating what you deserved all along, the inner child finally stops reaching because they've finally been found. At some point on this journey, you realize that blaming her, no matter how justified it may feel, won't set you free. You can analyze every moment she failed you, every word she said, every embrace she withheld, but that only keeps you tethered to the very pain you're trying to escape. Because blame is still a form of attachment. It keeps her energy alive inside you, not through love, but through resentment. And whether it's love or anger, the truth is she still has power over you as long as your emotional state depends on what she did or didn't do. The shift happens when you can look at her not as my mother, but as a human being shaped by her own programming. Before she was your mother, she was someone's daughter. She was once the child waiting for love. She was once the one absorbing fear, learning silence, mirroring pain. And somewhere along the way, that unhealed version of her became the one who raised you. So the pain you received from her was rarely personal. It was recycled. It didn't begin with you, and it didn't even begin with her. It was passed down generation after generation through nervous systems and belief systems until finally it landed in your hands. And that's where the responsibility emerges, not to excuse what happened, not to pretend it didn't hurt, but to decide that it's going to end with you. Compassion is not weakness. It's not letting her off the hook. It's simply saying, I will no longer let what she couldn't give limit what I allow myself to receive. You don't have to reconcile with her. You don't have to speak to her. You don't even have to understand her. What you do have to understand is that healing doesn't come from getting an apology. It comes from no longer needing one. The child in you may still crave justice, but the higher self in you craves peace. And peace comes the moment you choose to stop waiting for her to change and start choosing who you will become regardless of what she could or couldn't give. There comes a moment when you realize that healing is no longer dependent on whether she ever softens, apologizes, or understands. You've been waiting for her to change so you could finally feel at peace. But what if peace doesn't start with her? What if the version of you that's waiting is still the child, and the version of you that can heal is already here? Because the truth is, even if she never becomes the mother you wanted her to be, you can become the mother your inner child always needed. This is where the real rewiring begins. Not just intellectually understanding your wounds, but viscerally teaching your body a new experience of love and safety. And that doesn't come from thinking, it comes from feeling. From creating elevated emotional states that signal to your nervous system, this is what love feels like. This is what safety feels like. This is what being seen and accepted feels like. When you close your eyes and visualize holding the younger you, not with pity, but with fierce protection, something begins to change. Your body starts to realize that it's not alone anymore. The child is no longer abandoned. Someone finally showed up. And that someone is you. You can speak to yourself the way you wanted her to speak to you. You can set boundaries the way you wished she would have protected you. You can nurture your rest, your creativity, your joy, not because you've earned it, but because you exist. That is the reparenting process. That is how you install a new emotional operating system. And when practiced consistently, through breath, through intention, through repetition, your body eventually stops reacting to the world as if it's still trapped in the past. It begins responding to the present with trust instead of fear, with openness instead of defense. And here's the extraordinary part. When you become your own safe place, your entire reality reorganizes to match that new signal. The relationships you attract shift. The way people treat you shifts. The way you treat yourself becomes non-negotiable. Healing no longer depends on her evolution. It depends on yours. There comes a day when you stop waiting for her to say the words you've needed your whole life. You stop hoping she'll suddenly wake up one morning and know exactly how to love you. You stop rehearsing the conversation where she finally admits she was wrong. Not because you've given up, but because you've outgrown the waiting. You've realized that every moment spent longing for what never came is a moment stolen from the love you could be giving yourself right now. The mind will try to convince you that closure comes from them changing. But real closure is recognizing you don't need external permission to feel whole. You don't need her validation to believe you are worthy. You don't need her approval to feel proud of who you've become. The moment you withdraw your energy from seeking her acknowledgement and redirect it inward, you reclaim every part of yourself that you once outsourced. Imagine what happens when you no longer make decisions based on, would she approve of this? Or what would she think of me if I chose this path? Imagine acting, speaking, dressing, loving, not as the child trying to meet expectations, but as the fully conscious self choosing from freedom instead of fear. That's when your power returns. That's when your identity stops being a reaction to your past and becomes an expression of your future. This is not rebellion, it's liberation. It's no longer, I don't need her. It's, I honor her journey, but I no longer shape my life around it. You can love her without obeying her patterns. You can respect her without inheriting her limits. You can remember where you came from without letting it dictate where you're going. And when the day comes that you stand in front of the mirror and no longer hear her voice in your head, only your own, that is when you know the healing is real. Because you didn't just change your thoughts, you changed the source of love itself. You stopped searching for it outside and started generating it from within. And in that moment, you don't just break the cycle. You become the proof that it was always possible.